Controversial political pundit Roger Stone has pled not guilty to obstruction of justice and making false statements to federal investigators. We've got Larry Nichols with us today to discuss the ongoing Robert Mueller investigation. Larry, how are you feeling today?
I feel a little puny, but I'm all right.
Yeah, good to hear you. Your voice sounds a bit strained, but I'm glad to have you. If at any time during the conversation, Larry, you feel like you need to go, just feel free to let me know. So one of the people we want to talk about today, Larry, because you and I have spoken quite a bit about Robert Mueller, I want to talk about Andrew Weissman. We've heard about Rod Rosenstein, although he's been basically absent from the public for some time now. What's the story with this guy, Andrew Weissman? What role does he play in the investigation? What are your feelings about what's going on here with Roger Stone?
Well, Weissman is the trap. He's the trap. He's the one that can build a case where there isn't one. And that's very important. In Mueller's case, if what we've seen holds true and he's really found nothing, that doesn't mean anything. He'll bring Weissman in and he'll make something up. And remember, when you're, the good old days when you were charged with something, you were innocent until proven guilty. Well, today, when you're charged with something, you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent.
Yeah.
And they know how to do it better than most. They know how to fix it to where it's virtually impossible to prove you're innocent. You can't prove you didn't rob a bank on Sunday in Oshkosh, Michigan, just because you can't say where you were that day, or whatever. So, I mean, they're masters at that, and they're going to do, this is all a political hatchet job. This is all designed to remove Trump.
Yeah.
Never doubt it.
Now, you've just said something really important, that you're saying that Andrew Weissman is critical in this, sort of whole making stuff up. But it seems like they've been making stuff up all along. I mean, we've got this incredible FBI raid on Roger Stone's house. Now, Roger Stone, I think, is 66. He's never been arrested for any kind of violent crime. I think everybody knows he's a political muckraker or whatever you want to call him. But he's never had any gun crimes or violence. He doesn't own any guns. Yet they sent more people to wake up this 66-year-old sleeping guy and his wife than they sent to apprehend Osama bin Laden.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that?
That was done specifically. I believe he is getting near closing his case. And so what he did is he used this one last shot with Roger Stone to prove to anybody that dares to get in their way, this is what's going to happen to you.
Right.
Excuse me 1 second. I'm the doctor. I've got to take. I'll
Sure.
be right back.
No problem, Larry. You take that. I'm going to turn down the volume on Larry while he does that. I think everybody agrees that was pretty excessive to have all those guys come and raid Roger Stone's house. I think everybody has seen that with CNN and all that. And we've done shows in the past with Larry Klayman and Michael Moore. Of course, tonight we're going to have another episode of More Pain, only on Patreon. So I hope that people will go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/truepundit. Tonight we're going to be talking with Michael Moore, and it's going to be one of those shows that you can only see on Patreon. So, Michael wrote in his book that the FBI raided his home in a similar way. That book, of course, is How We Dismantled the FBI in Our Pajamas. I will admit I'm vamping a little bit here until we get Larry back. I want to hear his opinion about some of this stuff that's going on. Larry's talking about how one of the most precious rights we enjoy here.
Hear me?
Hey, Larry, I've got you. Yeah. We just wanted to go back. Just wanted to go back to what you were saying about being presumed innocent until proven guilty. This literally is one of the most precious rights that we possess here in the United States, and I think people really need to understand the danger of foregoing that right.
Well, you know, it's a foundational principle of our form of government. And when you start, look, everything they're doing, they're changing our government right in front of our eyes. Number one, look at what they're doing with abortion in New York. Then look at what they're doing with Roger Stone. They're moving at breakneck speed. Time is compressing, and they're closing in. They're closing in. And what you're all sensing that's wrong. Everybody's sensing something's wrong, but they don't know what to do. Well, what you're sensing is wrong is we're moving towards socialism. This is that silent coup wrapping up in socialism. And they're going to use Mueller to get rid of Trump. Now, there's no way the case would even come up for Stone. There's no way. I mean, he won't even get up for a year or so, and it's going to be right in the middle of the primaries. If they started an impeachment tomorrow on Trump, it wouldn't happen prior to the election. But just the fact that they do impeach him and start the process, they figured that's enough to beat him. You know, that's why, Jason, you've got to look at and read the signs. Look at the 20 to 30 people that are planning to run for president on the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Most of them know it's not their time yet, but they better go ahead and try. They better get their shot in now, because they know whoever wins the Democratic Party primary, they think is a shoo-in for the next president in 2020. And then that president will be the last president, Jason.
Yeah. You know, Larry, while we're chatting here, I'm looking around on Google. I saw it yesterday and I can't seem to find it now, but John Brennan, the former director of the CIA, I think it was on CNN, he actually said that we're innocent until accused of a crime. He said that on television. Well, that's absurd. That's not the way it works, because then you can just accuse anyone of anything and they're presumed guilty until they can prove themselves innocent. That is, in fact, the direction that the Department of Justice has gone in, right? We've seen it with Kavanaugh. We've seen it with Dr. Corsi. We've seen it with Roger Stone, and certainly in the world of social media, any accusation whatsoever is treated as factual information and bandied about, and people's lives and businesses are ruined over these sort of things. That's what's happening to Roger Stone, right?
Yes, and just think about this. Somebody could make the allegation against you to a federal prosecutor that doesn't like you, or if there's some reason you're causing trouble to the socialist movement, then all they got to do is send those thugs in to get you.
Well, it's happened already, Larry. People know. I've been accused of things falsely by a number of people around the internet. Some of them are so aggressive. These accusations have gone on for approaching 2 years. They've presented no legitimate evidence, and this is remarkably similar to what we see happening in the case of Roger Stone. We've got this accusation that, let's take a step back, Larry, because what they've basically accused Roger Stone of is having a back channel of communication to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks is a journalistic source. It's a website that publishes information. So even if Roger Stone was in communication with WikiLeaks, why is he being questioned by the FBI about that?
I know. I mean, that's what I'm getting at. And then, but think about it. The things that the counts they're charging him with really have nothing to do with that.
And that's another important point, because what we're seeing, what Robert Mueller is putting on display for everyone to see, is a standard procedure of lawfare. They've sort of got this quiver of arrows that they can essentially fire at anyone, and then that target is put into this system. They are ground up in the gears of the legal system, where they have to hire a lawyer, and it no longer matters if the person has actually done what they're being accused of. It no longer matters if the accusation is true or false. It just locks them into this situation where they have to start paying a lawyer. And even if that lawyer determines that the accusations are false and baseless, the person is basically done.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it works, buddy. That's the way it works. And it'll happen to anyone that gets in the way of this progressive movement. Anyone. I mean, they're weaponizing the legal system. And, you know, it's the end if we don't stop it. If we don't stop it. Now, Jason, I hate to do it, but my chest is dropping.
No problem, Larry. Your health is of paramount importance. Go take care of yourself. We'll do another show later this week or next week, but take care of yourself, okay?
All right.
Sorry about that, Larry. Well, okay, unfortunately, Larry's going to have to take a rest there. I want everybody to remember that they can sponsor Larry by going to nicholslive.com. That's Larry's website. He's got blog posts there. He's got the YouTube videos that he and I do together. And of course, you can click on the donate button and you can support Larry. I wanted to ask him about some of his experiences with Andrew Weissman, but unfortunately, we'll have to wait until next week for that. Now, somebody's just sent me a link to this John Brennan video, but it's not quite getting me there for some reason. John Brennan went on CNN and flat out said, "You're innocent until accused." And this is just something we've got to get away from. Our country cannot operate in that way where people are guilty as soon as they're accused. Obviously, that allows anybody to accuse anyone of anything. Yes, Phil C. is saying that the legal system has been weaponized. Well, I mean, the questions that I want to answer have got to do with the role that Andrew Weissman plays and, you know, what Larry would see in terms of, you know, Andrew Weissman doing. We haven't seen anything from Robert Mueller. I know Larry's had some personal experience with Andrew Weissman, and I always like talking to Larry about his personal experiences because that gives us some insight into things that we might not know about. So, yeah, Trump hired Pompeo, who openly attacks Julian Assange. Yeah, that is strange. There are a lot of contradictions in the Trump presidency that don't make a lot of sense. So I'm sure everyone knows, they've watched on other channels that Roger Stone has pled not guilty. It's a really interesting scenario. We see so many different, you know, pundits on the left, I guess you'd call it, who are saying, oh, you know, we've got Corsi, we've got Stone, we've got Manafort, we've got Flynn. Look at all these guys who know Donald Trump, who are getting indicted, and they think that that guilt by association means something. It's the most important thing that each of us has to do as citizens and individuals is take some responsibility. And by that I mean, you know, you don't want to ruin somebody's life over false information, just as you wouldn't want someone to ruin your life with false information. And since we've all been empowered with these broadcasting platforms known as social media, each of us have the ability to share information with thousands and even millions of people. So I think it does impart upon us some degree of responsibility to make sure that the information that we're sharing to the best of our knowledge is factual. And I try to do that. There have been accusations from others that say that I'm engaging in some other method, but that's not correct. Now, it's not to say that we can't be tricked. Right, Dynamex is talking about the swinger matter. Well, look, if Roger Stone and his consenting adult wife decide they want to be swingers, that's not illegal, and it's not something that he should be, you know, prosecuted for or caused to have to answer for in public. It's his personal life. Yeah, so people are saying, Thomas is telling us that Weissman is our own Valerie Berea, the KGB monster. I think we've got a number of problematic people in the Department of Justice, and it's very possible that Andrew Weissman is one of them. I haven't given very much thought to Andrew Weissman before today, and I was looking forward to Larry's analysis of Andrew Weissman. Larry's not feeling well right now. I could really sort of detect it in his voice when he first got on the phone. But I want to point out to people a couple of the charges brought against Roger Stone, talking about lying to federal prosecutors, talking about witness tampering, and I believe by that they're talking about communications that Roger Stone had with Randy Credico. Now, I can tell you that I've seen some of these personal communications from Randy Credico, not those necessarily to Roger Stone, but Randy Credico is a guy that I don't know that much about or don't know that well. I do know that he had a radio show on WBAI and that he interviewed Julian Assange, so we've got basically, you know, public information that he's in communication with Julian Assange. And as we know now, there's tons of communications between Roger Stone and Randy Credico. So it seems a foregone conclusion that he was communicating with Randy Credico, who is communicating with WikiLeaks, but none of that should be a crime. What they're charging him with now are process crimes related to the charges brought against him. They say he's tampering with a federal witness. Well, let's see, who else has said that? People want me to talk about Luke Rosiak's new book. I haven't read it, and I don't know too much about it, but I am interested to see what Luke Rosiak has in there. We'll see if we can have a conversation with Luke Rosiak. But basically, we've got Roger Stone being charged with witness tampering. We've got him being charged with lying to federal prosecutors, investigators, that type of thing. And we know that these are crimes that are, as I said, they've got this quiver of arrows, sort of crimes that they could basically, you know, almost set anybody up for. We know there are a lot of famous people who have lied to Congress who've never been charged with anything, and they're, you know, lying about much more important stuff than did they or did they not have a text message with Randy Credico or Jerome Corsi. And I mean, what we're seeing is theater of the absurd here. They're just trying to pile as much onto President Trump as they possibly can to manipulate public perception and to damage his ability to be reelected. I find this remarkably similar to what is being done in the lawsuit that's been brought against me by an individual who's very active on social media. He's accusing me of tampering with federal witnesses. And it's interesting because what they did was they created a fake lawsuit and introduced all of this fake information and then named people as witnesses. People might not know this. I haven't done a lot of talking about this lawsuit that's come from David Swigert and the separate lawsuit that's come from Robert David Steele, but it's interesting to note that this group is following almost the exact same playbook as Robert Mueller, which causes me to wonder, are they somehow connected? So David has entered 7 declarations into the Robert David Steele lawsuit against me, making himself a federal witness and naming other people who he thinks will be federal witnesses, because that's a federal civil suit. So now what he's done is he's enabled himself to claim that anything that I say, calling him out, like saying he's been spreading false information about me, he's going to say that's intimidating a federal witness. So I want people to try to understand how these processes get started. And Roger Stone has told us that he's basically broke. He can't afford health insurance, he can't afford life insurance, and these are major concerns for people in their 60s, 70s as they advance in life. Roger has told us that he's got a handicapped wife who's deaf, and they have 29 armed agents come to his house at the crack of dawn. That seems extremely excessive to me. I think they definitely could have called his lawyer and instructed him to appear at the courthouse or the police station or whatever it might be, and warn him that if he fails to do that, they would sue him. And yeah, right. So George was talking probably to Lee Stranahan. I was contemplating going to the courthouse there to see Roger Stone enter. But again, it's very expensive every time I travel to Washington, D.C., and there are certain people who are very actively trying to spread lies about me to dissuade people from financially sponsoring Crowdsource the Truth by going to patreon.com/Crowdsource the Truth. Mr. Swigert has even gone to the lengths of naming Patreon and threatening them with lawsuits to create a situation where Patreon will have a negative perception of me, maybe not want to communicate with me. People know I've been trying to communicate with Patreon's CEO, Jack Conte. If I were Jack Conte and some person was suing me because of allegations against Jason Goodman, obviously the most conservative and safe thing for Jack Conte to do is to remain uninvolved. And this is exactly what I believe Mr. Swigert intends to do. He wants to intimidate anyone who comes on my show. He wants to spread lies about me. He's now got people on other channels that used to be my friends spreading false information about me, and they don't allow me to challenge my accusers, to face my accusers. This is the most important thing about this case with Roger Stone to me, is that we cannot have a Department of Justice, a law enforcement apparatus, a CIA director like John Brennan, who think that we as citizens are innocent until accused of a crime. The man literally said that. If we can get that link to him saying it on CNN, it was just unbelievable. But he believes that, and that means that anyone can accuse anyone of anything, and they're guilty. So people are asking me if David Swigert is George Webb's brother. He is. He is George Webb's brother. So when people like Steve Outram say, oh, how did these guys close down a port and nothing happened? Well, first of all, these guys didn't close down a port. George Webb and someone he introduced me to named Okie Marshall Richards presented me with information that they presented in such a way that it seemed highly credible. They showed me an article from the Maritime News that a Maersk vessel had run aground in Bangladesh with radiological material on it, and that it had created an environmental hazard. And they spent a lot of time convincing me that Okie Marshall Richards was somebody to be trusted. And George told me that this could be a dirty bomb if they had a small amount of C4, and that the risk to the public was so great that it could be an event worse than 9/11. And when you start to assess the risk, you know, like, what is the risk? If you alert the Coast Guard that maybe there's something on this ship based on this information, that information, etc. And remember, George was instructing the Coast Guard to look at specific containers on that ship. Now, what's happened since then is that George's brother David has, and Robert David Steele, have made an unbelievably aggressive effort to try to change history, to try to make people think that something other than what actually happened is what happened. And in doing that, he's bringing about these civil lawsuits. Steve Outram claims that nobody was questioned by the FBI and nothing happened. That's wrong, Steve Outram. George Webb was detained in Ohio and questioned by the JTTF, and I believe the FBI as well. I have no idea what was said in that investigation or that interview, and we could speculate all day, but for some reason they chose to not press charges against George. And I've spoken to the JTTF agent. I called him because I wanted to get information, and the JTTF agent told me that because George has a lawsuit against the FBI on this matter, that the FBI won't speak to me about it because I'm somehow named in the suit. So you start to see how these legal shenanigans can, sort of interweave with one another to create these complex scenarios that when you're given part of the information, whether it's about Roger Stone and all the people on CNN who say, oh, these 5 guys who know Donald Trump have been indicted for 5 unrelated things that have nothing to do with Russia collusion and nothing to do with Donald Trump. Kelly, what are you talking about? I think we've communicated before. We've got somebody here who's upset that I support Ole. I don't support Sidethorn. Ole called me up one time and spoke about Sidethorn. I don't know who he is. I disagree with his methods, and I think they probably have some merit in putting him in jail for harassing and intimidating people. I don't know anything about the facts or details about what went on in Sutherland Springs because I haven't looked into it. But again, I want people to focus on what's happening to Roger Stone, what's happening to Jerry Corsi, what's happening to Michael Flynn, what's happening to Paul Manafort, and let's look at the through line here. We don't have men that were treated as innocent until proven guilty. We have men that were maligned in the media, social media, mainstream media, etc. They were charged with process crimes, lying to investigators. Now you hear that, you don't know what the nature of that is. Again, if they ask Dr. Corsi, hey, did you ever have a text message with Randy Credico? And if he says no, and they say, what about this? You had a text message with him in 2016. Well, perhaps the doctor has forgotten. We've heard this a million times, but they're doing this now. They're doing this now with Roger Stone. And they're just trying to create a public perception that anybody having anything to do with Donald Trump is bad news and you shouldn't vote for Donald Trump in 2020. It's the same exact thing that my detractors are attempting to do here. They want you to think that Crowdsource the Truth is involved with all kinds of crazy things that I am not involved with, that Crowdsource the Truth is not involved with. They present incomplete evidence, falsified evidence, pieces of things. They'll tell you, oh, Jason worked on X-Men Days of Futures Past, therefore he must know the director of that movie, therefore he must have been at a party at that director's house, therefore he must be guilty of crimes by association. That is not the way anything works. I have never met the director of the X-Men movie. I've never been at a party at his house. If Dean Fougere is so stupid as to actually think that every single movie has a party at the director's house, that's just nonsense. That's just foolishness. And people likewise believe the same kind of foolishness. If you really think that it's standard procedure for the FBI to send 29 armed officers to someone's house to arrest them when there's no suspicion of armaments in the home, the person's not being charged with a violent crime. I mean, we need to really understand what's going on here, people. There's nothing to stop Robert Mueller and the Department of Justice from doing this to any of us. The Inquisitor says, Roger Stone is not a good guy. Let's not fool ourselves in this regard either. And the point that I'm trying to make is that is totally irrelevant to the accusation that he has somehow assisted the Trump campaign in manipulating the election. Roger Stone could be a terrible guy. I don't think that matters. He is still due justice. People's personal opinions about him have nothing to do with the way the criminal justice system operates. A lot of people have told me that Roger Stone is a swinger, Roger Stone is bisexual. These are all things that Roger Stone is free to do, that have nothing to do with news on the national stage and have nothing to do with whether or not he's been involved in any of these allegations. I want to point out to people that we've moved so far away from anything having to do with the election or Russian collusion. It's now got to do with who texted who and can they remember if they texted them. And we're not even talking about Russia. Why is Robert Mueller not investigating people who actually did business with Russia? Here's what I would offer. When we want to talk about lobbyists, I think a lot of people, including me, don't have a very good picture of exactly what lobbyists do, but I think Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, John Podesta, you know, these guys are all political animals who are running their lobbying firms, their PR firms, their law firms, whatever they're doing there in Washington, D.C., to all effectively do the same thing, manipulate the story, manipulate the media to craft an impression that gets people to vote for one candidate or the other. What we're finally seeing here in 2016, 17, 18, and now 19 is, I mean, Donald Trump has exposed the disgusting underbelly of all of this activity, and there are a great many people operating in social media who do essentially the same things. Okay, I've got Cheryl Atkinson here. Let me just take this call. Hi, Cheryl. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm live on the air right now. What I could do is, if I could call you back from the... Okay, everyone, what we're going to do is we're going to end this stream right now, and I'm going to call back Cheryl Atkinson, who also had a very important hearing going on. So I'll be back in just a little bit. Thanks for watching, everybody.